everyone. My topic today is on how to conduct online mediations and arbitrations, and some of the things that mediators and arbitrators have put in place to make that process easier. Now, one of the first things that I've got to think about as mediator, arbitrator, is the technology that the participants have available to them. So I may have all of the necessary technology, for example, to do a video conference like I am now, but that doesn't mean the participants do. And even if they have the right equipment, they might not have a good internet connection. And so it's important to know that if you're using a product like Zoom, it's also possible to bring people in using a simple telephone. So they can participate in the meeting even if there's no video link. The other thing that I recommend to people is that sometimes when bandwidth is not great, what happens is the audio suffers. It fades out, or it becomes digitally compromised. And so in those circumstances, sometimes it's more effective to have the video feed, but then do the audio by way of telephone. And there are phone-in numbers for Zoom, so that you've got at least good audio and good communication during the meeting. The next thing that I want to talk about is sharing documents, because during mediation and arbitration, of course, documents often become important. So there's a couple of ways that you can share documents. The first one is that Zoom itself allows you to share a screen. So in other words, I could have my laptop here and have a screen on my laptop, and then share that screen, whether it's an Excel program or a Word document or anything else, and we can go through it together as a group as it appears on the screen. That works well for some things, but in other cases, you've got a much larger volume of documents, and that's not a very practical way of sharing them. So what I do is I use a program called Sync. It's like Dropbox. It's a cloud-based storage area. But the difference is with Dropbox, at least I have concerns, and I'm pretty sticky about security and about making sure that documents remain confidential. And I'm not convinced that a lot of these programs and providers have the level of security that I would want as a lawyer over these private documents. So Sync is a Canadian-based company. All of their servers are in Canada, and all of the documents that are uploaded are encrypted so that only the sender and the receiver can access those documents. It's relatively inexpensive, but what I will do is I will have people upload to that Sync folder, and then the people involved in the mediation or arbitration can have access to it by way of passwords granted. So only the people that are designated to be able to access those documents can, and then each side can print off anything from that shared folder. So it makes it very effective when you've got to share a lot of documents at the same time, and it allows everyone to pull the document up on their local computer or to print it off ahead of time for the remote session. Okay, so let's move on to another topic where you've got lawyers and clients participating in mediation. Well, should they be in the same room, or in other words, an office like this, or maybe they can't be? Maybe they need to be in separate places, and which is better? I find that wherever possible, it's better to have both the lawyer and the client in the same meeting room, because they have the ability to mute the microphone and have conversations between themselves. And if you've got a large enough room and all of the proper health requirements in place, there's no reason why two people might not be able to be in the same room. I find it more useful, but let's say that that's not possible. If it's not possible, these programs also have the ability for the mediator to have breakout rooms. So in other words, I can create a separate room for the lawyer and the client to meet separately, and nobody can hear or see what they're talking about. And then they return when they're done having their breakout. Either that, or if I want to caucus, I can do the same thing. I create breakout rooms, and I can join one room and speak with one side, and then create another room and speak with the other side. So I use that often in the right circumstances. What are some of the benefits of remote mediation? You might say, well, are there any benefits? There absolutely are, especially in family law. So for example, a big one would be, let's say that there's been domestic violence and there's a real fear that that violence could somehow arise during mediation. You don't have the same concerns when you're doing remote mediation by video. The other big one is, especially in my field, people can live thousands of miles apart and they need to have resolution to their issues. How do you do that? Well, you can bring people together from all over the world at the same time using remote mediation. And there are some real benefits there. As a mediator, you can also control the conversation. See, when everybody's in the same room, often you get people trying to talk over each other. Quite often it's the opposing side, and then the mediator has to step in and exert some real control over the conversation. And it's harder. Sometimes you need to break the mediation just to give people some space and regain control of the room. When you're doing remote mediation, it's really simple. I just click a button that says mute when I want somebody to be quiet. And I can tell them that nobody can hear what they're saying, so they might as well stop talking until it's their turn. It's much harder to do that when you're all in the same room. It also allows for less travel. And I'm talking about travel even within the city, where you've got lawyers on different ends of the city or clients on other ends of the city, and they may have childcare concerns or other things. It allows you to do things, especially on an urgent basis. I could have a video meeting with two clients this afternoon to resolve a parenting issue. Much harder to do that when you've got to bring everyone to the same location, especially with busy lawyer schedules. It also allows for shorter sessions. So we could have a session for a half an hour to talk about something urgent that's come up, and then push off the bigger matters to another session. So there's all sorts of benefits. There are some drawbacks. As a mediator, it's harder for me to read body language. On the plus side, it's harder for the opposing sides to read body language. And I can tell you that sometimes body language in the same room with really highly conflicted people, sometimes it's the body language that sets things off. So you can use your judgment as to whether using remote mediation would be better or worse. Keeping track in my head of time, I would guess I'm pretty close to 10 minutes now. Jillian, can you give me an idea of where I am, and should I now start taking some questions?
Sure, you have about 3 minutes if you have anything else you'd like to discuss, and there is one question. So I can ask you the question now, or I can ask you after.
Let's jump into questions.
For sure, perfect. So from Basil Banzal, what's a good technique to ensure there is no audio or video recording device turned on in the room so any discussion is kept without prejudice?
That's an extremely important question. And In my retainer agreements, I specifically put provisions in there that indicate that people will not be recording. But how do you prevent it? Well, you can't absolutely prevent it, no more than you can prevent somebody from turning on phone recording and putting their phone in their pocket during a live mediation. All you can do is get people to agree that they won't do it. That's no assurance, but it's about as good as you can do. Hopefully that answers the question.
I believe so. We don't have any other questions at this time, so attendees, if you have any questions, now's a good time to get them in. Wayne, I don't know if you have any sort of final thoughts or.
Well, I wanted to talk about a little bit about technology, in that if you're going to do this a lot, I would recommend that you actually invest in proper equipment. So get a good camera. The camera that I've got here, it allows me to move it around the room. It allows me to zoom it in on any kind of writing that I'm doing on whiteboard. I've also got sorry, now I've lost myself. Here we go. I've also got a separate microphone that actually will capture the sound of the entire room. So in the event that I'm in a room with a client or some of the participants here, the microphone does a much better job of picking up all of the sounds in the room and gives you good sound quality. I would recommend that you invest in that. If you don't have the ability to do that, you don't have a microphone like that, then use a telephone with conference call and then phone in to Zoom, because then you can use the conference abilities of the telephone, and the microphone is going to be much better than just trying to use the microphone embedded in the webcam.
Thanks, Wayne. We have a few questions that are all very similar, which is, can you share the specs of the movable camera? Again, the specs and the exact model, and what brand of camera and microphone is that?
The camera that I'm using is a Logitech model. It's about $400. I think it's a BCC 950, but I'm going off the top of my head. They've only got one model in that category, and it's got this big eyeball that sits up on a stand, and it moves around. So it's really hard to miss if you look it up on the internet.
Great. And I'm sorry if you've answered this, but where would you buy the mic and camera? Would that be online, or did you buy it from a particular store?
It's probably easier to get it online. However, right now, it's extremely difficult to get your hands on webcams or remote microphones. So you might have to be patient, but I think there's still one place in Canada online that still has some of the Logitech cameras. The microphone, it's hit and miss. It's a Jabra microphone. So there are a few places that sell them.
Great. And then one more question, then I think we'll wrap it up, and perhaps you and I can touch base and confirm sort of the make and model again, and we can send it out to any panelists, to the attendees. So this question is from David Barker. Would you have any thoughts about remote four-way meetings in family law?
I would do them in a heartbeat, and I do them in a heartbeat. I think most family lawyers in town, out of necessity, if nothing else, are becoming much more adept at technology through the COVID crisis. There's one lawyer in our office, I won't mention their name, but they just absolutely hate technology. They won't even do an email. They have their email printed off, and then they have their assistant do a response email. But that lawyer is embracing the Zoom technology and loves it, and it really allows things to keep moving during this time in a much more effective way than a phone call does.